Okie dokie. Welcome to the new episode on From Grind to Great, the show for the alternative entrepreneur, for the entrepreneur who's ready to flip the script and challenge the norms and choose freedom first. Because the freedom is not actually a destination, freedom is the path. When you stop grinding for freedom, success tags along for the ride automatically. And she's nodding already. And so the mission is to actually make this the norm in the industry, the new standard, the default. So let's do it for yourself. Let's do it for your children. Let's do it for humanity. And so we are talking about all things anti-grind, the way to build business without the grind, the opposite kind of way from what we are made to believe in the society. And so I'm so very, very excited to have my guest, Julie, on with me today. Super excited. And, I believe we'll be talking about many things. But I think most importantly that when Julie and I first chatted, we so agreed about what I just said about what the
I'm
podcast
just like
is
nodding
about.
my head, like,
It was
yep.
all along the same lines. And so but also I'm so excited about diving into your expertise on NLP and hypnosis and wiping out those limiting beliefs, all the things that entrepreneurs, especially women, are actually suffering from, and sometimes without even knowing. And like they are facing some invisible forces and they're not realizing, and they're blaming themselves. So I think this is super important to be chatting about this. So very, very welcome on my
Thank you for
show. I
having me.
so appreciate you. And look at that smile and all all the vibe that is coming from you. It's already so nice just to be seeing you.
I'm so
Yeah.
excited.
So very welcome. And
Thank
so, as I mentioned, if you could give, so I said a few words about you, but if you could add a little bit more about yourself for the listener.
Yeah, it's like a loaded question, right? Who are you?
I
I
know.
I like to say, well, just starting with who I am off the bat, my name is Julie. I am a certified master clinical hypnotherapist and trainer. And in a nutshell, what I do is I help a lot of people, specifically business owners, coaches, entrepreneurs, grow their businesses a lot easier and quicker with hypnosis and subconscious reprogramming. And then my work has certainly taken a shift where I also now teach, train, and certify others in this work too. So it's really been all about the ripple effect and it reaching more people, which is very exciting and warms my heart so much.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was thinking when you were telling me about the certification, the ripple effect.
Mhm.
It's so cool when you are actually, well, you feel enabled to do so, right? And I believe that's at the core of being an entrepreneur, creating the ripple effect. However,
100%.
right? However, that's what we want. That's what most of us, came to do this kind of work. However, as you know, a lot of us are facing all sorts of difficulties and
Mhm.
all sorts of challenges without even perceiving that. And a lot of us actually drop out, right?
We
How
do.
sad, how sad, right?
We
And I
do.
and like like in our industry, and tell me if you agree, generally in our industry and society, if you drop out, you are the one kind of guilty, you are the one to blame, you are the one who's not disciplined enough.
Mhm.
But I think that's not exactly accurate, right? And I think there's so
No.
much conditioning and
Yeah,
programming.
I was gonna that's our conditioning. That's
Yes.
our programming running our show. We all have these uh thoughts that are very like recurring that we hear quite often, right? Like, I'm a failure, I'm not good enough, who am I? I'm not worthy. It's our conditioning and programming that are like really running the show there.
Yeah, and I think we'll dive deeper into that. But first, I would love for you to tell. I I know you have a story of your own, and I also know that that's how we learn from each other's
Yes.
stories when
Yep.
we relate to them. For We learn from other people's, let's say, I don't want to say the word mistake, but some sort of a life,
Learnings.
setbacks or things like that. But also we get inspiration,
We do.
right? So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I'll go back a bit. I always say like my story started when I unexpectedly lost my mom. I was just 10 years old. I believe she was 35 at the time.
Mm,
It was like very sudden, very unexpected. Like world was definitely like turned upside down, shattered. And I was the type of person who like hid everything and like stuffed things down. I wasn't very vocal about my emotions and like what I needed. So for a good couple of decades, that is how I operated. A good couple of decades, and it did not serve me in the slightest. I was very reactive to a lot of things and a lot of people. Um, I also didn't think that I could, like, ask anybody for help, like, I always felt like I
mm,
needed to be, like, the strong one because I was also the oldest of 3, so I
mm,
thought I also needed to be, like, strong, so I never wanted to show, like, how I was feeling, so I, like, definitely stuffed everything down, and, I had worked with, like, a couple of therapists over the years, and for me, like, that wasn't the modality for me, it wasn't what I needed, at that time, and so I fast forward now, I am working for Lululemon, so, like, a really popular athleisure wear company, and I was just a go-getter. A lot of my conditioning from, like, what happened with my mom, and I really just wanted to, like, people please, and I was a go-getter, and I just wanted to overachieve. Um, I was there, I was, like, climbing the ranks at Lululemon, went on a sabbatical, came back, stopped drinking the Kool-Aid, and was just, like, a little bit more vocal about certain elements of my role, and lo and behold, a couple months later, I actually ultimately got fired.
mm,
Um, Biggest ego blow to ever happen to me. Also biggest blessing in disguise, but I couldn't see that for 2 years. I was definitely, like, um a very much a victim mentality for a couple of years, but I I can land pretty quick on I can land pretty quick on my feet, and that's what people see, but I would never show them the internal conflict that I was battling.
mm.
And so when I say I landed on my feet, I just like jumped into the world of entrepreneurship because I was like, I'm gonna show them. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna show them what they like missed out on. And so, right, I feel like we've all probably had that before in some
Right.
scenario.
Yeah.
And so I entered the world of entrepreneurship. I started my first business, which brought a lot of the health and wellness community together. The relationships I formed while I was at Lululemon. And that business was great, but had to close the doors to that and pivot to coaching because it was during COVID. And a lot of these health and wellness professionals were losing jobs, closing businesses, and they really needed to focus on additional streams of revenue. And so that is something I did with them at my time at Lululemon. So I really went into coaching, but talking about like grinding and burning yourself out, I burnt myself out like really quick and really fast. And I entered into I don't want to say a depression, but I was borderline, to the point where my boyfriend at the time was just like, "You need to get help." It it was not a good situation. And so I knew I needed something. I didn't need more personal development. I was the person as a business coach was I was investing in all of the things because I on social media you compare yourself left and right to everybody to see what they're doing and you're wondering why haven't I done it as quick as them? And so I was investing in all of the things and I happened to stumble upon like NLP and hypnotherapy. And wildly enough, I ended up taking a chance and diving into it and that had unlocked a lot of things I had stuffed down, because it's like what I was actually experiencing from the burnout, what I was actually experiencing from getting fired from Lululemon actually all stemmed from my childhood and all stemmed from what I had, like, pushed down when my mom passed away. So it was, like, peeling back those layers, but without having to, like, reassociate or, like, revisit, like, that story in the past, and that is what catapulted me into the world of hypnotherapy. It was, like, purely by chance, purely by accident. It really helped me with my healing journey and my grief journey. I
Mm.
felt like I could really start processing my grief, after decades of stuffing it down. And then I also started to notice, like, relationships started to feel different. I had an estranged relationship with my dad, and, that relationship started getting better. We're great relationship now. He's in Florida. I'm gonna go visit him next month. And then the way I started responding to things versus reacting also changed. So there was a lot of things personally, um, and then kind of overflowed into business. But I mean, I had setback after setback, mistake after mistake, like failure after failure, like being afraid to like share my voice and share my emotions. And all of that has like absolutely led me to like where I am today.
Yeah, yeah. I can't tell you how much I actually relate to what you just said in terms of being the oldest kid out of
Mhm.
three,
Yes.
being the one responsible, being the one who's strong and almost like I have no uh feelings or something, as in
Mhm.
like, right?
Yep.
Whereas I
You
actually
got to be
am a
strong for
very
everybody else.
sensitive person, but
Yeah.
I just like there is a wall, and I don't know why. Still, I'm still digging, still digging. There are a lot of so much of that, right? So it's very interesting. So I think there are a few components there, right? The society, the
Mhm.
education, the and even the family structure, right?
Oh, God,
All those
absolutely. And even, like, growing up because I mean, this happened when I was 10. In my teens, we also like, where I grew up, like, nobody else had experienced losing a parent. Like,
Mhm.
I was the only one, really, and so I also felt like an outsider.
Mm,
So, I was also in this, like, outsider phase of, like, trying to, like, identify myself, and it's like, okay, like, I don't identify with this group of people. I don't identify with, like, this group of people, so I was never, like, super close with, like, a
mm,
group. I was just, like, friendly with everybody. I would,
mm.
like I the way I like to describe it to people is, like, I would have, like, close relationships, but I would keep you, like, just far away, like, just enough, like, wouldn't let you, like, really in. So I had this, like, outsider mentality a lot of my life.
Yeah, that's actually quite sad. It must have been very hard for you, like
Mhm.
on top of that personal disaster you had to go through, those external kind of things. So, yeah, I mean, but also, what I was thinking, and I think I was thinking like that thought just hit me now that we talk about business, but we talk so much about personal life. And it's like we
Mhm.
separate the two, like when we become an entrepreneur, and that's what you are kind of expected to do at work, right? When you are in 9 to 5, they tell you, you came to the office, it's work. And then
Yes.
when you leave, you shut a door and then it's life.
Yeah.
It's like, right? But then when you're an entrepreneur, and it just only dawned on me now, how we run our business depends so much on how our life is or has been.
Mhm.
Oh my God, it's like,
Yes. I actually shared a quote last night. I'm gonna find it because it, like, really hit for me where it's like most business owners, we always think about the next business strategy or, like, what's our plan for, going
Mhm.
into the next year. And the quote that I shared was like, well, your business isn't going to change until you change. So, like, what's your strategy for yourself? Like, a lot of us aren't taking
Yes.
into consideration, like, okay, like, what do I also need to be the best version of me for my business?
Yes, and I mean, it's just so, it makes so much sense. And I think it's such a big blind spot for so many people. It's like, oh, this is my business. This is the strategy. This is the platform, Facebook, TikTok, or whatever. This is what I'm doing, shut the door. And I remember like so many times I actually, at the start, especially of my business, I used to have a completely devastating situation at home, a very hard, difficult situation. And then I just wipe my tears, and 10 minutes later, I'm sitting in front of the camera doing a Facebook Live, all happy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh my God, it's so crazy. But at the same, but also the limiting beliefs, all the belief system as well comes from childhood, and somehow it's the last place where we look usually.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And what you shared too, like, I also want people to know that it's okay to feel and experience the duality, right? Like, yes, there can be a moment where we're in our feels and we're feeling it and we're like going through a hard time. And we can also like show up fully on an Instagram live or a Facebook live if we want to for our business. Like the both can like coexist. It doesn't have to be,
Mm-hmm.
oh,
Yeah.
well, like I'm just gonna feel like in my feels and it's not gonna I can't show up powerfully in my business. Like you can experience and do both.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you can
Yeah.
totally. But then, and then also the underlying layers,
Yeah. Oh, so
you know,
many
all
underlying
the
layers.
And I think the first indication, and let me know if you agree, the first indication when you need to start digging somewhere deeper and potentially, most probably, going into your childhood,
Yeah.
it's when you feel that you're in some sort of a loop, right?
Yeah.
And a repeating pattern, right? And that's where okay, this mainstream personal development is not
Yeah.
sufficient.
Yeah. And I can share why that is. Well, it's always helpful. It's not to say it's not helpful, but it's most self-development is tapping into the conscious part of your mind, which is the part of your mind that, we're reading books, we're listening to podcasts, we're thinking, we're overanalyzing. But we really need to get into the subconscious part of our mind because that
Mhm,
is where all our beliefs, our thought patterns, our emotions lie. Uh, and a lot of times we're not tapping into that. So
mhm,
if we are looping patterns or looping thoughts and nothing's changing, it's because we're trying to change it with the conscious part of our mind. And
mhm.
we can't necessarily, or maybe we can for a short period of time, but it's not sustainable, right? It's like when we get into the subconscious, that's when it can actually change for more of the long-term sustainable. Um, yeah,
It's
that's what
so
we want.
yes, yes, yes. It's so true because so many times I intellectually understood something. So many times I'm like, money is not evil, or
Yep.
whatever, things like, or I can do it. I'll do it. And by lunch, I'm like,
Yeah, it's like we go back. It's like when you think about it, like let's say if you're working with like a nutritionist, right? And you're like, "Okay, great. Like I know I need to drink this amount of water, sleep this amount per night and like eat this much protein." And you're like, "Okay, I'm going to do it." And you do it for the first 2 days, but maybe after that you're looping back into the same patterns. It's because you're only working with like the conscious how-tos and the action steps when we actually got to get into like, okay, well, what are the programs running your show that are keeping you in this same comfortable pattern? And you can change them for the better always. Like that's always like the good news.
yeah, and I think the first step is to be aware of them.
Yes. Always.
right?
Mhm.
So, yeah. And so we mentioned NLP. So, and I'd like to touch on that a little bit at least. Um, and for somebody who is not aware of what that is, could you give a quick explanation about it?
Yeah. So NLP, so I'm an NLP practitioner and an NLP trainer. So I do this work with clients and then I teach, train, and certify others to do it themselves. NLP stands for neuro linguistic programming. In a nutshell, I like to say it's like the language of the subconscious mind. So it's actually like how you work with the subconscious mind. So if you were to think of like an octopus head, say that's like NLP, and then you have these tentacles, like one's for
Mhm.
hypnotherapy, one's for emotional freedom technique, tapping, one's for like timeline therapy. Those are all of the different modalities within NLP that you can then change people's thoughts, behaviors, beliefs. Um, so I just like to say, like, really simply, it's the way in which we communicate with the subconscious mind so that we can create that long-term sustainable change.
I, I love the octopus
I
analogy.
love a good metaphor. I love a good metaphor.
It's so easy then to really
Yeah.
picture what it is. Yeah, very cool. So, in terms of, and because of the topic of this podcast in general, the grind,
Mhm.
anti-grind, and what I liked analyzing and exploring is how grinding actually prevents us from achieving what we want to achieve instead of like go 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 do discipline
Mhm.
and do it anyway. You don't feel it, but do it anyway, so I think this freedom first idea, I think it's not just like something that we in my head, is not something that we want. It's something that we kind of must, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And the grinding is so, like, the feeling like you need to grind or work really hard or hustle, that's actually a symptom or behavior from a limiting belief that's not serving you. So if you think about it, like, I know I grew up in a household where I saw my dad, who was a business owner, working really hard day in and day out to make an income and to make like provide a living for us. So I believed because I saw that we need to work really hard to make money. Right. And so that's where that work hard mentality can come from, that can lead to that hustle, that can lead to that, like lead to that grinding. Um, or like even not even just seeing it, but even hearing people say, like, yeah, you gotta like work really hard, right? Like you gotta work really hard to make it, to make money. Um, all stems from childhood. And again, it's like we're not most of the time we're not consciously aware of it, but it's that first step you mentioned of like just becoming aware of it is like really the first step of like, okay, like how am I operating here? Because like that operating like mentality or function isn't going to lead as much as we think it's going to lead. It's not going to lead to like the freedom component that we're really desiring.
and so the question is then as well. So for me, when I was grinding, so I did believe that it was too, like I'm making it too hard.
Mm,
Like I kind of knew it.
yeah.
But I guess the difficulty was where I did not know how to do it differently.
Yeah.
If it's not discipline, if it's not massive to-do lists, if
Hmm.
it's not some sort of a well-defined strategies,
Hmm. Yep.
so what else? How could somebody like that, where would they start or even try be aware of what else they can do?
Yeah. Well, I think once you do become aware, and I think the awareness piece comes from like, okay, like let's say with this working really hard and like grinding component, have you reached the goal yet? And first, you even know what that specific goal is? Because the majority of the time, many of us don't know what that is. or haven't identified what our version of success is. We're just grinding, grinding, hustling, hustling. And a lot of times we're like, we don't even know what we're hustling for. Like, what is it that we're specifically hustling for? And so if we find like, okay, I'm not there yet, I'm not there yet, I'm not there yet, like what are the behaviors? Like what patterns are we continuing to do over and over again?
Mhm.
I'll actually share one of mine. One of my things that I'm still actively working on is I always say I want a very spacious calendar. But yet I always fill my calendar with, like, all of the things. And so when I'm filling my calendar with all these things, I actually can't get the things on my to-do list done in order to move the needle forward in my business. I've been, like, filling my calendar with, like, very unnecessary things. So this is very much a work in progress for me, like, going into
Mm.
especially a new year, that I need to work on and where it stems from because that's me being aware all of a sudden of the behavior. Right? That's the behavior. I want a spacious calendar, but I'm filling it. Um, but I'm continuously filling it. And I'm realizing I'm just like I'm self-sabotaging myself because I'm afraid to say no to people.
Mhm.
So this is where you
Yeah.
just start to reflect. Like you just, okay, I'm like, what's the behavior? I'm like, I'm filling my calendar with unnecessary things. Like that's it. And then you can like dive in a little bit deeper. But it's like, yeah, I'm afraid to say no to people. And
And
I was
you
like,
know,
that's gotta stop.
yeah, I'm laughing because it's just like you're telling that, and I'm just like remembering the ads and the posts and the marketing campaigns from people and gurus. Fill your calendar with appointments.
No, it's like that's like that to me feels suffocating. I love to look at my calendar and be like, "Oh my god, I at least have 1 or 2 days a week that have, like, nothing on there."
Mhm.
Right? So, like, I can, like, have some creative time, I can have some productive time. There's obviously time and space to, like, do things like this and connect with people, but it can't be every single day.
I know, right? But it's people get so are so proud of actually doing
I'm not.
things, being busy,
I
being
am not. Because I know like, for me and, like, the goals I have for my business, especially next year, I need white space.
yes.
I need white space. I'm not gonna be able to get creative if I'm busy with one thing after the other,
Yes, and me too now.
right?
The problem for so many people is, and I saw somebody's post quite recently, it takes guts to rest or something like that. We are,
Mhm.
you know,
We're hardwired not to rest.
right.
Yes.
It's so true. It's so hard to, it feels like I'm not doing anything. I'm not gonna make any progress. Things are gonna fall apart. I'm gonna
Mhm.
lose the momentum. And that's how I used to feel
Yeah.
every time there was upcoming school holiday and I knew I was not gonna be able to be involved as much, or I don't know, family visits or any events. And
Mhm.
if I missed a few minutes, you
Mhm.
know, something like that, I felt like my world was gonna fall apart.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
it's so normal. Like, I think we all feel that, right? Or, like, any given time, and I think it's, like, normalizing it too.
so how can somebody actually start having those gaps in the calendar or their activities in general? And we're not only talking about not filling your calendar with, I don't know, prospecting calls or something, or
Mhm.
sales calls, whatever. We're talking about just, gaps as part of your routine, really, to reset,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think I say the simplest thing people can do because we are inundated with content, with information all day long. The best gift you could give yourself is like maybe at least once a day. If you go for a walk or if you're in your car, can you just like listen to nothing? And actually just tune in and listen to your own thoughts instead of constantly flooding your brain with more of somebody else's thoughts, right? Or even like music I think is okay, but like a lot of the times we're not listening or not giving ourselves our own time and space to listen to our own thoughts. We're so inundated with other people's that we lose sight of what it is that like we even want. We're just thinking we want that because we've heard it from so many other people of like what they want, but it's like not what we want. So I think the easiest thing is like creating that space. I go for walks with my dog and I stopped listening to podcasts during my walks. Like those will be like intentional times somewhere else in my day. Um, but yeah, I think that that's one of like the easiest things to just start doing.
Yeah, I really agree. And I even you can even like even if you think that you are having, me time or whatever, but you are constantly listening to something or
Mhm.
watching in relation to your business.
Yep.
And I mean, it's my hobby as well, right? But I do find myself kind of fed up at times,
Yeah.
there's too much information. There's
Yeah.
no time to process
Inundated.
that information.
No, we don't give ourselves enough time to process it. So it's like, even if it's, yeah, go for a 15-minute walk or whatever it is, you're driving in your car. Most often times now, I don't really listen to much in my car anymore because I'm like, I feel so inundated with messages and information. So sometimes it'll be music, but sometimes I really listen to like nothing.
Mhm.
So I can just like tune into myself and like work things through on my head in my head about certain like elements of my life or business and just like, okay, like what does my intuition say versus listening to what someone else
Yeah,
has to say.
that's it. That's it. I think a lot of people are actually afraid,
Yes, I agree.
to be with themselves. That's how our society has worked for a while. So, could you talk a little bit about how NLP and hypnotherapy could help somebody to start exiting the grind and stepping into flow,
Yeah.
into slowing down and seeing that this is where the actual wisdom and all the answers are.
Yeah, and that is the work of NLP and hypnotherapy is like actually tuning into yourself and your subconscious. It's not a done to process. So meaning like I'm not doing anything to you. We're like we're doing stuff together to access your subconscious mind in order to like rewrite certain beliefs or rewrite certain thought patterns. So for example, like if someone's in that like grind, maybe there's a belief running their show of like I'm not good enough. And so I always like to say I like to work with that core belief first versus just focusing on the hustle mentality and like the grind mentality. I want to focus on the belief of I'm not good enough and reprogramming that first. Because once you program, because if I just do like the hustle and grind, something else is just going to pop into its place because I haven't hit like the core thing, right?
Mm.
Because the hustle and grind is just a behavior
It's
of
it's a
just a symptom.
symptom. Yeah,
Exactly. It's just a
yeah.
symptom of the I'm not good enough. So, usually I'll work on like releasing that and any emotions associated with it. So let's say fear, for example. What I do with clients is because I really believe in like you got to release some stuff that's been there for years, if not decades, before reprogramming. So let's say fear, you can actually dissolve the emotional charge and like neutralize fear, which what then that helps you do. Like, let's say if you're a business owner, when you meet fear in the future, you meet it with a neutral energy. And that allows you to take different actions than what you were not taking before. You're meeting it with a very different energy and a very different vibe. Um, so we're working on that core limiting belief. We're dissolving any like emotionally charged emotions that don't serve you anymore. So when you meet them in the future, because you will, you're a human being. It's not to say you're never going to feel them again, you respond to them differently. That's always like my favorite thing to do with clients because it always has like the most profound shifts. And then from there, we'll start working with the specific symptom. So, like the grind, the hustle. So, then we'll take like hypnosis and start reprogramming. Okay, if you don't want to be like grinding, you don't want to be hustling, what do you desire your day, your life, your business to look like, and we focus on like painting that clear picture into your subconscious because like that's what we want to go after. So it's a little bit of like a step-by-step process that like really sets you up
Mhm.
for
Uh,
success.
that's very interesting. Are there any patterns that you notice where people are stuck usually?
Um, People are stuck in a lot of different areas, but all of the core limiting beliefs for most people are the same. I'm not deserving, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy. That's like the stem, like that's the root of everything. Pretty much, like one of those.
And it's kind of shocking. It was shocking to me. And actually, it's so interesting because I'm a marketer. So
Mhm.
actually, a lot of that stuff actually I learned through marketing,
Yeah.
learning how to market stuff, how to do copywriting to persuade other people. And oh, so there are only a few like core beliefs. Well,
Mhm.
that makes it easy.
Right, yeah, it's always like
Kind
one
of.
of those, and
Right.
then obviously everybody's like symptoms and behaviors are gonna look different.
It's so it's so shocking. It was
Mhm.
so shocking at the time for me, but it's actually also quite liberating
Yes.
because we kind of know, right, what to look for.
100%. And what I think's liberating too, and I tell clients all the time, I'm like, I wish I don't record. The only things I record are when I'm actually in a hypnosis, so I can like gift that audio to the client to keep listening to. But I always say, like, I wish you guys could hear each other because you would realize how like not alone you are, and we're actually all quite
Mhm.
similar.
Mhm.
And when I facilitate for groups and they start sharing intimately, everyone does feel that liberation. Like I did an in-person session about like stress release, and it was like a lot of moms, and they all realized, wow, like what I'm sharing, it's not just me.
Mhm.
Like, and that's liberating for a lot of people to know it's
That's
like not a just
amazing.
them thing.
Yeah, and I think that's the power of group coaching and group
Mhm.
containers,
Yes.
right? People learn so much from each other and also inspire each other
Yeah.
and like sort of borrow courage.
Mhm.
It's so cool. So is there anything like, so we mentioned, right, like if you feel that you're stuck in some cycle for a while, but that's kind of a broad way to look
Yeah.
at it. But are there any more specific signs that people could look for to and see,
Yeah.
oh, okay, right, this is happening
Mhm.
my world, and now I kind of need help. I need to look for something, dig deeper.
Yeah. I think being aware of the thoughts that actually run through your head. Like one of mine a lot of times is like, wow, I feel like not smart enough. Like if you hear the same thoughts, or like I had one client where we worked on, she's like, I just don't know. Like I just don't know. And I was like, you know, but her go-to answer is always like, I don't know. Because she has this thing that, yeah, like she's not smart enough either. And one exercise people can start doing is like when you're aware of the same thought that keeps coming up for you, is like, okay, like you say it, it's like in your head, but then you can, it's called a switch task. You can instantly say out loud or in your head, switch, and then say something that's more positive. So if mine is, wow, I'm like not smart enough, switch, I'm giving myself grace to be a beginner at learning this right now.
Mm, that's
Because
really cool.
the more you do that, you're taking a thought that's ingrained in your subconscious that's negative, right? It's running on autopilot. You're taking it, and you have to do it a bunch of times, but the more that you keep switching it with a positive one, it will ultimately go back into your subconscious as a positive one. So it's just like retraining it. That's an easy one that anybody can start doing.
Oh, that's really cool. Love it. So what do you think is going on and that was the case for me when I was like, in some coaching programs, some coaches will tell you, just remind yourself about your wins. And so I swear I was reminding myself about lots of my wins. And I'm like, I was making lists. I've done this and this and that, and IT
Mhm.
masters in IT and yoga teacher and this and this, well, whatever, million things. I'm like, look, I'm looking at that list. I should feel like a bleeding rock star, but I'm not feeling.
Mhm.
You know,
Yep.
I'm still not doing, I'm still thinking I'm stupid or whatever.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Well, I think for a lot of us, it's we bypass accomplishments. Do you know what I mean? Because we're striving to the next thing. We're striving for the next thing. Well, I haven't gotten to this next thing yet. And it's like, let's say you do accomplish this big thing. The majority of us we're not celebrating. We're like, oh, okay, cool, great. On to the next thing. What's the next thing? And so I love celebration lists because it reminds you of the things that you've celebrated. And I always like to say, if you're not taking time to celebrate the things that have happened and you have done, well, why is the universe going to give you more? Right? Like, why is it going to give us more
Yes.
if we're not doing that? We're just in that's almost like still in the mentality of the hustle and grind of like, okay, great, next thing. What's the next thing? Versus like almost like allow yourself to be in the energy of gratitude for a little bit and like pride of like what you have accomplished.
I so relate to that. And I think a lot of it comes down to also developing awareness of those wins because
Oh,
we
yes.
take them so for granted. And one thing
Mhm.
that actually dawned on me yet just yesterday that I should have been celebrating, but I was not, was like when I moved from Ireland to Lithuania a year ago, I was like, okay, this is becoming like a bit even more of a grind now that I work a lot with the
Mhm.
States, and so now my evenings are longer. So now it's 2 more hours on top of that, like 2 more hours away from the US, and it's just like it's not sustainable. So okay, I need to expand in Europe. Like I need to network in Europe. And I was like, and that has been my sort of a goal. And yesterday morning, I was sitting and it dawned on me, oh my God, I should have been celebrating. I
Mhm.
made so many connections in Europe ever
Yeah.
since. I am creating a partnership with somebody in Europe, in France, and I didn't even register that. And I'm like, I was not registering those things,
Yep. A
right?
lot
I was
and we
like,
don't a lot of the time. We don't at all.
so
Yeah.
that's the other thing that we really need to. So the sort of the setbacks, the I don't want to use the word the bad things, well, the tricky things, but also the good things,
Mhm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I'll always ask my clients when we start a new session. First, I'm like, okay, great. What are we celebrating this week? So, like, we're getting in the practice of the celebration. And then I'll always ask, okay, like, great. Like, what shifts have you experienced this past week or like in between sessions? So then we can acknowledge the shifts that have happened because a lot of the work I do, it's subtle shifts on the back end that really start to create like bigger shifts and so we have to be able to acknowledge like the small shifts because it's going to keep leading to the bigger things.
Yeah, and then, when you do, the universe starts supplying those
Yes.
those things to
Yes.
us. So, yeah, that's fascinating. And this is work in progress for me as well.
All
Like,
of us, right?
don't
All of us.
how do you celebrate? How do you
How do I? Well, so I'm in actually the middle of a launch right now, and the old me would have been like, okay, like I did, and today's the last day actually. So I've been actually a lot better of like holding the energy and writing it out to the end because I know for me, I'm a last minute Linda, and I always sign up like at the very last minute. So I hold the energy for my last minute Lindas. Um, but what's different, I'm not viewing it as a 'cause ideally, I'd love to fill 3 more spots, but in my head, I'm like, "I feel really good with, like, what I have. right now, and I'm not harping on anything. I'm just like letting everything transpire the way that I can. But even just like starting the day with a couple of things you're grateful for, I think is really helpful. And even in the
Yeah,
middle of like a launch, like what I was talking about, like holding the energy, but being grateful for what you do already have instead of beating yourself up for maybe like what you don't think that you have.
yeah, and I think that's the case. Like when we say celebrated, we don't necessarily mean open a a bottle of champagne.
Yeah, I mean, unless you want to,
Every
it's a
time.
big
It's
milestone, go
noting.
for it.
Yeah, it's just noting sometimes and
Noting.
grateful, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
noticing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I like to do too is on my social media, I like to do like a quarterly recap that I'll always share with my community, both personal, both professional, both the good and the bad. So I will like celebrate myself publicly. That's new for me. Celebrate myself publicly, but then I'll also share the learnings.
And on that note, actually, now that you're saying that as well, I think a lot of us, a lot of people have uh, somewhere hidden some sort of beliefs around celebrating publicly
Uh-huh.
because now we're bragging.
What are they gonna think about me?
Yeah, so
Mhm.
what are your thoughts on that then?
I've moved through a lot of that myself because I used to have those thoughts of yeah, like who am I to share this? What are people going to think? Are people going to think I'm bragging? But the way that I share, I always share with my community and they know me because we've built that connection. I'm never sharing to brag because I'm also sharing the learning. So I'm sharing the
Mhm.
duality of what's going on behind the scenes that they may not see, which brings in like the human element and the human component of it.
That's so true. So it's, talk about it as as a lesson, as
Mm,
a make a message out of it, something
mhm.
to learn from, right? Instead
Yeah.
of just, oh, look at me, I've got
Yeah.
this like thing. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Because like what I shared, maybe it was for Q1 or Q2, I forget, but I shared, like, looking back, I'm like, I got engaged, like, for most people, they'll read that and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm so excited for her." But then the duality and the learning I also shared was like, yeah, and it was also, like, a time of celebration, but also, like, a really hard time for me because, like, yeah, I knew I would never have my mom for this, but, like, it doesn't hit until you're in it. And so there was a new wave of grief that came up that I was like working through. So it was the duality of celebration and grief at the same time. Um, but and sometimes people will only see the celebration, but like I wanted to see them to see like the back end too.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of the medicine for that
Yeah.
thing. Not to mention that we deserve to celebrate publicly,
Yeah, 100%. It shows people like what's possible for them too, which I think is really important,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so I'd like to touch a little bit about on when I first started this podcast. It happened and I mentioned to you very spontaneously, and I like if the moment it dawned on me I need to do this podcast, it was done. And I think it's so important to just do it when that message comes to you. And
Mhm.
and I felt so in a flow, and I'm like, there's ups and downs and all that kind of stuff. But for the first time, really, I felt so much power in just flowing.
Mhm.
No, I could not believe, like, I, and obviously I was trained that way, structure, strategies, logic.
Same.
And,
Same.
you can get very good at that. Like, and you
Mhm.
can do amazing things, which is that, right? But then when you hit that sense of flow, oh my God, it's the whole new world and the whole new
Mhm.
power and stuff like that. So what significance does that have, do you think, for entrepreneurs in general? And why should everyone at least consider, stepping into that mode of doing things.
Like stepping into the mode
A
of,
flow of
oh, flow.
like
Yeah.
intuition, and I guess for me, it relates a lot to accessing that unlimited intelligence
Yes.
and
Well,
yeah.
I like to think of it as, well, like all like the doing stuff, like it's that, like you're doing, right? Like when we're hustling, when we're grinding, we're just doing. When you're actually getting into like flow and creativity, that's the being piece. So it's like the who are you being as a person? Who are you being as the entrepreneur versus just like doing the things the business owner does or
Mhm.
doing the things the entrepreneur does. Because it's when you shift your state that, so like when you shift your emotional state, and this is like what I teach with NLP, your internal representation of the world, which comes from your subconscious, affects your emotional state, how you respond to things. And that state is going to dictate how you behave and show up. So being in flow and like learning how to be in flow is really important because actually going to shift and drive your behaviors of like what you're doing in your business.
Mhm.
Like you said, like creating like that space for creativity is going to be so important. That's where like the visionary piece can come in versus just like being behind the scenes and doing.
Right. And so that's actually that's right. Like, so when we are saying we are creators, which we are,
Mm-hmm.
um, most of us are trying to create by doing, like typing on the keyboard, writing words for the post.
Mm-hmm.
That's how people understand creation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
However, creation happens before you even sit at the bloody laptop,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. Who are you being?
So what is your day like? Like, what is your, let's say you are coming up with a launch, with a new launch or a new program, or I don't know, a new post. Like for me now, a lot of times if somebody was looking at me, they wouldn't even know that I'm working, because I'm not
Mm-hmm.
working, like I'm not sitting at my desk doing things,
Same.
but so much is going on
Yeah. Same,
in my,
same.
yeah.
I've gotten a lot better at, so like there's this whole topic of like morning routines, right? I'm not a girl that wakes up really early. I'm more of a night owl.
Hmm.
Um so I get up and typically before 12, like before noon, that's my time for me. I'm working out, I'm taking my dog for a walk. I'm actually like sitting down and enjoying breakfast, which I didn't do for a long period of time. Or I'll say like before 11, before like 11 a.m. or before noon, because I found that like my most productive time for work is like a 12 to 4, 12 to 5. But then like my creativity is like better at night. So like I'm a night owl
Mhm.
because it's like everybody's asleep. Nobody needs me for business. I have more like, I don't know, time by myself at night, if that makes sense.
You're just rubbing so against.
It's not the norm.
What about the 5 a.m. club?
I can't do it.
I'm like,
I can't do it. It's
no.
just not. And even like when I wake up, I don't I mean, I have a dog who sleeps with us, so it's like I cuddle with my dog in the morning, like I focus on that. Um, maybe once or twice a week, I'll like pop in a hypnosis in the morning. So like I'll wake up, listen to that, and then get up, work out, go for a walk, like all that, and like get ready for my day. That's
Uh,
it.
it's so funny, and I actually was just thinking a couple of things. I was thinking, did you notice that so much of our industry, like mindset coaches, come from Navy SEALs and
Yeah,
those kind of like,
yeah.
and they are like, go, 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 like learn how to sleep standing up, and like,
I
and
can't do it. I still get I see, I was making myself wrong for a long period of time because I was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to bed too late. I'm getting up too late
Mhm.
when I should be
Yes.
getting up at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., whatever it is." But I'm like, this is kind of how I operate. Like I like the
Mhm.
peace and quiet at nighttime, but I'm still getting in the amount of sleep that I need. I'm just going to bed later and like
That's
sleeping
it.
later.
That's it. And
Yeah.
also the other thing that I was wanted to say is like, and I think that's what you are saying as well when I was listening about your so-called morning routine, which is not really that morning, but
Nothing crazy.
a lot of my work now is more like what people say, getting ready to get to be ready.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Which is so
Same.
contradicting.
Yeah.
And it's really like, I mean, what's the point? And for me, and I don't know if you do it, and it's work in progress for me as well.
Mm.
Like if I am not in the right energy when I'm sitting down to write a post or something like that, what's the point? I know it's not gonna
Same.
work the way.
Same. So that's why I will go for my walk in the morning. And that's when typically thoughts will come and I'll just write it in my phone so I don't forget because I forget pretty easily. But when I go for a walk, that's when like inspiration or ideas or content will come up. I used to be the business owner that had all my content planned in advance. Now, no, I don't. Um,
Yes.
I'll like send there's a woman I work with where I send her my ideas and I'll like send audio messages and she'll turn it into content, but I don't have like, oh, this post this day. And a lot of times I make it up on the fly. Like tonight I'll probably just like make up a random one.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, they
it's
use
the
these
energy of
the
it.
content calendars create,
Love it.
for the whole year used to be so many.
Mm,
They are popular, but those things are out of my sight
yeah, it doesn't
like
it's
now.
not to say it like doesn't work for the right person. It's just right now like that's just not for me.
I think, well, and I might be wrong, or maybe it's not always the case, but I think people who do use those kind of strategies, they kind of go for high
Yes.
numbers,
Yeah, I would agree.
like more content, more content, more
Yeah,
content, that
agreed.
kind of stuff, and being everywhere on every platform, and those kind of things.
Agreed.
Um, yeah, but I'm like, I was so done doing that. I used to do some of that stuff, but I was just so
I
done
did it
doing that.
too.
It's important.
Yeah,
It's
now
like,
I'm like, it's just not me. And I actually want to shift my content a bit. So like today's like the last day of my launch. And then we have election week next week, so it's a very funky time here in the States. Um, I just want to like shift my content to be all like personal rather than business right now, I think through the end of the year. Because I think people are so busy and the more I'm learning, I'm like, yeah, like when people are on social, we're going on to like dissociate, not to like learn this huge new thing. So I'm like, oh, like how can I just bring like the human element and connect that way? Versus it just being so, like, education or, like, business focused.
yes, and I think, and also what happens for me as well is like sometimes when I'm in the mode of getting ready to be ready, sometimes I get such a strong idea that I kind
Mhm.
of I almost run to my laptop. I do
Yes.
yoga normally, and I'm like, I can't wait to. Or I don't even finish my yoga session sometimes, and I just
Yep.
God. And it's so easy and so fast. Instead of sometimes, I don't know about you. Sometimes I used to spend hours just writing one post. Like I
Yep.
don't even want to remember that. you
Mhm.
know.
Same. I did too. I did too. It was a lot. It was a lot.
So I'm looking, oh, look at the time, 22:22 for me. That's what
Love
these things
it.
these things keep happening for me now.
Love
The
it.
clock related patterns, like all the time at the
I
moment.
love it.
Something is up, something is brewing. So anyway, so it was such a cool conversation.
So
Julie,
great.
thank you so much. I'm looking at the
Thank
time.
you.
So yeah, so I do sort of a like blitz couple of questions with my guests.
I love it. I love it.
But before I do that with you, I would like for you to share. So you talked about how you help people, so unless you want to add something, and also where you live, as in like in the virtual world, not.
Yeah.
not in the face.
Yeah. And
And
I
wait,
always say like the easiest way to reach out or find me is Instagram. So julie.m as in Mary.Costa. And then my website's the same, juliemcosta.com. And my doors and my DMs are always open for like questions, conversations, what have you. So feel free to always reach out.
lovely. And I'm gonna add the links in the show notes, obviously, so people can find you easily. And the blitz questions is, so the first one is that I usually ask is, when you hear from grind to grace, what runs through your head?
Oh, grind to grace. The first thing that just popped up was a masculine to feminine energy.
Love
First
that.
thing that just popped up, which is like not that was not easy for me. I'm like a very masculine strategy
Mhm.
girl. And so entering into more of the feminine was like a challenge for me.
That's so cool. And I mean, I think a lot of us don't even know we are running from masculine, like women, like
Yes.
we're not even aware, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a beautiful angle as well. Oh my God, love it. The other one is, what change would you like to see in the world?
Oh my goodness. More people doing the inner work. And
Mm,
I'm not even just going to say hypnotherapy because I think we all find our modalities of inner work that work best for us. But doubling down on the inner work, because again, going back to that quote I just said, especially for business owners, like your business isn't going to change until you do. So doing more of the inner work of whatever modality feels most aligned for you.
yeah.
Like
I
that, I'm convinced will make the world a better place. Like 100% convinced.
100%. I totally agree. This is, I think this podcast is part of that as well, to
Hmm.
bring that into people's minds. So thank you for that. And the last one is, what impact would you personally like to make?
Oh, I I think it's in the works right now. It's the continuing to teach, train, and certify others in this work because it's like I'm one human being. I cannot work with all the people that want to do this work. So for me, it's continuing to teach it with others, and then those people are sharing it with others and others and others. So it is that ripple effect. And one of my clients and students, like her mission is to make subconscious reprogramming mainstream. And like I get to be like, wow, like she went through this program and now that's her mission to make this mainstream. So for me, it's just continuing to share
Mm.
this work.
And I mean, so first of all, that's really beautiful, and that's part of what I'm doing as well. Like
Mhm.
I'm a marketer, you know, sales, those kind of things, leverage, quantum leap
Mhm.
in business. But the angle I'm taking is what you said
Yeah.
as well. That's the way to go. And I think that's where we are heading. We are
Yes.
heading, right?
Mhm.
To
Yep,
that
and it's
place.
been beautiful to see too, like, I think more people are apt to, like, do the inner work, and there's more apt to be a ripple effect of certain things, so that's exciting.
It's very exciting. Very, very exciting. So thank you so much. It was
Yeah.
amazing. It was lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you
Always,
for
this
being.
is great. This was so fun to jam out.
Yeah, it's probably something we could be talking about forever, you know.
Mhm.
So, and for the listener, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please follow, share for that ripple effect.
Ripple
Right?
effect.
We need it.
Yeah.
And I'll chat to you next time in a week.
Thank you.
Okay, bye now.